All right, so this is a little demo of Medusa that we've been working on, and it's gotten a new UI, a new backend, so it's a lot faster, a lot more stable, all the good things. It looks familiar from like the feature set that was demoed a while back when we first came up with the concept. As you build your application, Webpack will report information to Medusa, and Medusa starts to populate a list of applications that we have here and the interconnected modules between all of these applications. So, I can see that home, there's an interconnect between home and the design system, search and utilities, utilities and home, so on and so forth. We still have our dependency tables and graphs and things like that. The big, nice addition here is our remote module management, which has gone through a bit of an update. And that's mostly what I'm going to focus this demonstration on, is just showing off the remote module management capabilities and giving an idea of like how this could be used out in the wild or why this is helpful. Okay, great. So we've got our UML with our applications listed out here. I have a couple different builds deployed for things like my design system or my navigation system. And what I'm going to try to go in here and do is kind of use Medusa's remote module management to control which federated modules end up being consumed inside of which host applications. So if we jump over to our home app, we'll see here I've got my design system set to green. And if I go and look at the front end here, you can see everything is green. So how this is broken down is we have nav, which uses the design system. We have the home application, which uses the design system. And we have the search application, which uses the design system. So all I want to do is make the buttons red for the home app. So I can go in here, go to the home application. I can change it to the red version. And if I come back here and refresh the page, now that's red. Let's say I wanted to swap out the versions of header that are being used. So I have this as a test for one of my headers. I can go over here where I've got test A, and I can just pick one of the previous builds that I've done. That build is, there we go. And, I can go back to test A again on the navigation, and I can swap them back and forth. Let's say I wanted to do something like change out the design system that the navigation itself uses. Same kind of concept applies. I can go down to my nav, and I can go to the design system, and I could say swap it over to red as well. Now, if I go back here, that one is red. And so the idea here is that I can keep as many variations as I want. And we can even do something like going back to nav and setting it back to its initial version. And now you can see, cool, I have a different version of the navigation, but the navigation has a different version of DSL installed. So it's not the whole build that's linked, it's the federated modules at each level that you're importing them at. So I can change the copy of what my home app is consuming of our navigation, but I can also change the version of the design system the navigation uses on its own. And then that in turn is controlled by which version of the nav that I decide to use on the home application. So it's kind of fractal all the way down, which allows us this very fine-grained control over who uses what versions and what versions we want to pin things at throughout our whole application. And it's controlled at each level that you go down. So per host application, you can configure it. So on the home app, it's going to get this version of the design system, this version of nav, search, and utils. I can go to the navigation system, and again, it has the same kind of concept because it's also using module federation to load the design system. I can say that for test A version of navigation, I can say that it should use the red copy. And we can kind of set them as we go down through all the other layers as well. So inside of here, we've got search. I could do the same thing on search where I could switch it over to red. And now I believe this will make it'll make all of them be read across the application. All right, so when I first log in, if I have never used Medusa before, I would go over to the settings page. I would generate a set of read and write tokens. And then I would copy these into, in my case, I have a little environment file. So that's my write token right there. And then I would get my read token. And this is how we allow Webpack to authenticate and communicate with Medusa. Then I will hit save so that my information is stored in here. All right, and now if I come back to the page and go over here, I should just be able to yarn build. Build the application. And now it's going to start off my Webpack builds. Just to give you an idea of what the Webpack configs look like is something more or less like this, where I've got my federation plugin and Medusa is controlling the value of those remotes. And at runtime, this code will run, which speaks to Medusa. At build time, Medusa plugin is here. We add some metadata that we might want to send up to it. And we add our URL base and the write token that allows us to get through to your user. And then we should start to see the applications pop into view as my builds finish and sends all this information over to Medusa. The user interface ought to start refreshing and building itself out as the applications are reporting the information in real time. Just waiting on the rest of our builds to finish up here. And we'll see them all come in. I think there's still one more application we're waiting on. Should be, let's see, we've got, yeah, our navigation layer. So that should, and there we go. And now there's a navigation. So user interface automatically refreshes itself, which is great. So as hosts report information or remotes report information in a Medusa, it should reflect in real time inside of your user interface. And then, we can still browse into any of these applications and it should look like how it looked before, where we have the current versions of the remotes being used. I've got the exposed modules that are coming out of this, the dependencies on this exposed module. So product carousel requires React and AntD. Here image just requires React. Here's the shared modules inside of the home application, what it's sharing out. Here are the other dependencies that I have got inside of the application itself. And you can also see the development dependencies that I report out of the application as well. Then I can see what all home consumes. I can see it consumes carousel, header, footer, search, list, analytics, and button. And you can see the different places where these different elements are consumed. Each one of these items is a federated module somewhere else in the application.